Hey guys, Yulia here. So I have been really busy with garden consultations already this season, which is kind of crazy because the spring hasn't even started yet. But what I wanted to show you in this video today are some awkward spaces that I encounter as I help my clients with their garden design. And we all have those challenging spaces in our gardens that we don't know what to do with. I use an app, it's called Garden Puzzle, to illustrate what I have in mind. It is not a perfect app by any means. It crashes way too often for my liking. It also has kind of a limited selection of plants, but this is the best I've got, and it has been working pretty well so far. So let's start with the first challenging situation. So the first thing that you do in this app is upload a photo of your space that you're working on and kind of calibrate the sizes. So this is the space. It is very narrow and long, awkward space. And what the client told me is that he just doesn't like to mow there, doesn't like to take care of the space. They pretty much never even go there, although their backyard is pretty small, so any extra space I think would be lovely to have. It's pretty much a weed patch most of the year. He would prefer not to mow it at all and come up with some sort of solution as to how to make this pretty and maybe even usable. So the interesting thing about this is that the fence is actually all around this. So it creates this dead end situation. Now, ideally, I would love for the space to have maybe a gate in the back there so the spaces pass through, or maybe a beautiful arbor with a clematis or some sort of a climbing vine on it, but it's not an option, so we're going to leave it as is. Another challenging situation here is this electrical panel on the right side, right on the house. But even in a space like this, you can create a very interesting part of the garden. Now, a little bit of a background on the client. He's actually a woodworker and a really good one. So I was thinking he could build like a really cool looking bench for this space, and coincidentally they do have a very old tree in their backyard that they're about to take down. It's very old, it's the end of its life cycle, and I think as a memento they can keep some of the logs and maybe make like a cool bench like this out of the logs, place it in the back, can add maybe a trellis of some sort to the back as well. Maybe two, where we can place beautiful climbing vines. Another thing that he did mention is that he wants to go with as many natives as possible, which is great. So maybe if we can find a native honeysuckle, one that looks like that. Oh, look how pretty that is already. Can plant two. We, of course, can plant some other beautiful climbing vines like clematis, climbing roses, even annual vines like hyacinth bean vine if you prefer not to wait for a year or two until perennial vines kind of take shape. So I think that's already very interesting destination area right there. Now this already looks a lot more inviting than it was before. Now, I would love to have a path that is leading us towards this seating area here. And usually people would go ahead and make their path straight like this in an area that is this size. But this only accentuates the narrowness of the space. So I would rather do a winding path. And because they are taking that tree down and they're going to have a lot of those wood ends and limbs, I think they can repurpose them and again keep them as mementos, but also create this very interesting winding path like this, about 2.5 feet wide. Doesn't have to be super wide, obviously, because this is, again, narrow space. And he would have to put some sort of a traction material on those wood ends so they're not slippery. He's a woodworker, so he can figure that out. So this already looks very interesting and quite inviting. Okay, so we have our winding path here that is leading us to the destination with a bench and some climbing plants behind it for privacy and kind of to make it a little bit cozy. And I think what else happened that is great is as this meandering path was created, these two beds, this one and this, were carved out. If we went with a straight path, the beds would have been way too narrow to plant any substantial shrubs or perennials. And the next step is to deal with this electrical panel on the side. And since these homeowners wanted to go with a little bit more native plants, I think a shrub slash small tree like a serviceberry standing ovation would be a great plant to put in here. They only get to about 4 feet wide. There are other plants, if you're not going with native plants, that are evergreen that you can include in this space. They didn't specify that they wanted evergreen, they just said they wanted any shrub. But things like fastigiate boxwoods or hollies, or there's tons of arborvitaes that are tall and narrow, like DeGroote spire, that you can plant in the space. Even junipers, if you have a little bit more space, there's a lot of narrow junipers out there in the market. But I'm just going to put in generic tall and kind of narrow-ish shrub right here. It could be serviceberry, it could be clethra, or something of that sort. So now let's underplant the beds, and this is kind of like the fun part of it. After we dealt with the challenging narrow space and carved out these beds, we can go with Itea virginica. Since again, they want a little bit more of the native feel. So we can do even 3 right here. You do have to keep an eye on these. They do sucker. Mine don't do it as bad, but if they're happy in the garden, they can start suckering. You could just remove the suckers. But because this is an enclosed space, they are controlled. Another set of plants that are absolute must for a native garden, if I'm working on one, are echinaceas, of course. So we can put a few echinaceas here. Let's do the fun ones here, really colorful. Another wonderful plant to include in a place like this are wild geraniums, or Geranium maculatum. They're just wonderful, a little perennial, kind of mounding, and bloom around May time. So we can kind of pop them everywhere. They also do really well either in full sun or part shade situation. Right next to the fence here, this gets a lot more shade. So I think maybe a couple of Christmas ferns will be just the way to go for texture. Everybody loves the fern too. And as you can see, I'm making this planting very informal. Yes, there are drifts of certain plants, but I usually have plants kind of jump all over my plantings to make them appear a lot more natural. Yes, the easiest way is to plant in drifts of 3, 5s, or 7s, but in more of the wilder informal look, you can get away with 2 and maybe plant 3 of the same type somewhere across the path, and maybe 1 cast away somewhere even further. So there is connection and cohesion in your planting. Another thing I would love to include in here is short Joe Pye weed. You know how much I love my Joe Pye weed? And they are varieties that are a lot shorter than the straight native species, like Baby Joe or Euphorbia ruby. I think one on this side, maybe somewhere over here. Let's move this geranium to this side. Then Joe Pyeweed over here. Joe Pyeweed also does pretty well in part shade areas. For texture, we have a few ferns here, like maybe another 2 right here to fill up the space. I want to go with some caryxes. And as I mentioned, this app doesn't have a lot of plant selection, especially natives. So I have to find a plant that kind of looks like that. So maybe this autumn moorgrass. Yes, I like that texture. Or maybe this one. No, I like this one better. Okay, let's do this. I love to include grasses even in a part shade area. There's a lot of selection of caryxes. There's a bottle brush grass. There's Champsia cespitosa that you can include in part shade. And there's nothing like that beautiful texture of grass in the garden. Let's do maybe a few here and maybe another echinacea right here in the foreground. This is enough plants for the space. I like the variety of plants and kind of a wildish look of it. I do like that inclusion of the taller shrub because if you make it all perennials, first of all, the electrical panel is not going to be covered, but also it provides a lot more structure and interest to the space. Now, let's see what this space looks like in the spring. So this shrub, whatever it was, it might have been a forsythia. So imagine this being a standing ovation serviceberry that would have been blooming in the spring. The sweet spires blooming in the spring, the summer, obviously a lot of the perennials are blooming. And then in the fall, there's a lot of fall color, especially from the wild geraniums. Wild geraniums have amazing fall color. And in the winter, they weren't that interested in spending a lot of time here in the winter, but the Christmas ferns are evergreens, and there's some structure with the bench and the trellises. But here it is, there you have it. This is how to fix a really narrow and long space, add some beautiful perennials and shrubs, and a destination with a meandering path. If you guys like these types of videos, let me know. I may make some more of these as I'm going through my garden consultations this spring. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video and learned something new, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. You want to be in the video again? Huh? I know. Yeah, it's all right. You can go lie down in your bed. You can be comfortable right there. Yeah, go lie down, baby. What are we going to do? How am I going to make a video? I don't know how to make a video with you like this. You are super cute though. I know. You are super cute. You are super cute.